Welcome to the news episode of In His Bag Midweek episode. Hasn't been too much that is happening, but the NFL free agency is fast approaching, so we'll tackle a couple of things that happened there and a couple of reports, things like that. And then we'll look at some minor NBA news, wrap up the Olympics and Olympic coverage there, and then I will not preview, I'll go over all the scores and all the games that I talked about watching on the Friday show, and I'll look at all the major standings after the weekend's games. So let's get into it. We're going to get started with the news. We're going to start off in the NFL with the San Francisco 49ers and Trent Williams. They have yet to come to an agreement. He's scheduled to carry a $39 million cap number this season. And if they don't figure something out, he's going to be one of the top free agent players in this class. And this is a major issue for the 49ers and their team as a whole. Their offense, it rides on Trent Williams and his ability to protect Brock Purdy and his blind side. He has been one of the best left tackles in the past decade, one of the best left tackles in NFL history, honestly. And like I said, the 49ers offense runs through him. Kyle Shanahan does so much stuff that honestly, if he didn't have Trent Williams, he wouldn't be able to do. I understand that he's been injured and he's missed time, a lot of time in recent seasons. However, to lose him completely would alter this offense drastically. It would put a lot more strain on Brock Purdy. They're already going to miss George Kittle for a large part of the season. It'll put a bigger strain on Christian McCaffrey, and we don't know what that'll mean for his health. He's had up and down health throughout the entirety of his career. They don't truly have a wide receiver one anymore. So if Trent leaves, this could be very, very bad for them. Hopefully they find a solution. I've seen reports that John Lynch said that they're hopeful they'll come to a resolution and that they'll figure something out for him that is beneficial for both Trent Williams and the team so that they can continue their partnership. I will say Trent Williams is getting up there in age. He's probably one of the older players on the 49ers roster, if I'm not mistaken. But like I said, he's still dominant, one of the best tackles of the past decade. So if the 49ers want to continue to do well, want to continue to compete, they will need to have Trent Williams on that roster. And then we'll keep going, but in the NFL, but we'll look at the Miami Dolphins. And Dolphins GM John Sullivan says that everything is on the table, including the possibility of a trade when it comes to Tua. So Tua hasn't requested a trade as it stands right now, but the Dolphins are in the process of finding a new quarterback, and ideally they want to trade him over just flat out releasing him, probably because of that massive contract, and that cap hit that'll hit if they just flat out release him. But this marks the end of the Tua era in Miami. It was ugly last year. It was very ugly last year, but there is to say that Tua had some good seasons. He led the league in passing that year that Tyreek Hill was gunning for 2,000 yards receiving. So he has the arm talent. There is a question of injuries. With the multiple injuries he sustained, there's a question of the concussions as well, which is a whole separate thing that has to be addressed. But it's clear that the Dolphins are restarting. I will say it's hard to see who they're gonna pick up because as it stands right now, the free agency class for quarterbacks isn't exactly amazing. The top name right now that I've seen floating around is Malik Willis. But to be fair, there is familiarity between Malik Willis and the Dolphins' new head coach, whose name is definitely not slipping my mind right now, Jeff Hafley. There's familiarity there. There's familiarity with the GM as well because both Hafley and Sullivan came from the Packers. So that's a good thing. But apart from Malik Willis, there isn't exactly any other amazing players. There's a possibility that Kyler Murray becomes a free agent if things don't work out over there or he gets traded, something like that. That would be an interesting trade right there. The possibility of sending Kyler Murray to the Dolphins and the Cardinals get Tua, but I don't know if the Cardinals would be exactly happy with that. They just brought in a new head coach themselves, so I don't know exactly if he wants to hang on to Tua. Again, it wouldn't be for that long either. So there's that issue. And then if you look at that trade on the Dolphins side, I don't know exactly if they want to bring in another small quarterback with who's supposedly a good runner and has arm talent. I don't know if they want to relive that whole experience a second time. So I believe the Dolphins, they'll probably trade him. That's what they're gunning for. But who they're going to trade him to is a big, big question because there's not a lot of options on the market. And then you look at the draft, it's not exactly a great draft class for quarterbacks either. It was going into the season. Everybody thought this draft class was going to be great. But as it stands right now, I think Fernando Mendoza is the only quarterback projected in the first round. Ty Simpson said he's going to throw at the combine. Drew Aller is going to throw at the combine. He is fully recovered from his season-ending ankle surgery. I saw that as well. But I don't know how thrilled GMs are going to be about Ty Simpson, Drew Aller, Garrett Nussmeier, Kate Klubnik, quarterbacks like that. I don't know how excited they're going to be for that, especially a Dolphins GM who's coming in. It's a new regime, and him and Hafley are most likely going to be tied to whatever new quarterback they decide to bring in, as is the case with the majority of restarting franchises. So a lot of things still to be decided. It's early on in the offseason for the NFL, so a lot of stuff can change overall. But then we'll continue on to another player that whose future is also uncertain, and that's A.J. Brown. Eagles head coach Nick Sirianni said he can't guarantee that A.J. Brown will be back with the Eagles this season, and this comes after kind of a rough disaster of a season for the Eagles. They did win the NFC East, but they it was a struggle. They lost to the first round of the 49ers, who didn't have like half their roster due to injuries. They didn't have Kittle, they did have Kittle, but they didn't have Bosa, they didn't have Warner. They were missing a bunch of other players. And I went over this in the power rankings, but the Eagles were in one good side of the ball, and that was their defense. The offense was a struggle bus. Saquon Barkley realized that the Madden curse is real. He struggled all season, and A.J. Brown honestly turned into the wide receiver diva that a lot of people have grown to dislike. He was reading books on the sideline multiple times, actually. He was complaining constantly. So there's tension there, clearly. It'll be interesting to see what exactly happens with A.J. Brown, and if they do end up moving off of him, where he's going to end up. I'm not 100% sure what his contract situation is. If I look it up right now, A.J. Brown has. He signed a 3-year, $96 million extension with the Eagles in 2024. So he will be with the team through 2026. However, if they decide to move off of him, it would most likely be via trade. And I don't know, after the antics that he put up this season, I don't know what team will be willing to trade for him. Like a diva receiver like that. Maybe, I don't know. It's tough. My first thought instantly went to the Patriots, but I don't know how, if they're willing to take on a player like that with the salary cap that he comes with, first of all, which they probably want to spend in other places, improving other roles, but also if they trade for him, who exactly are they going to send in return? It's not like the Patriots, I've talked about this before, it's not like the Patriots have this abundance of roster talent. So that's an issue right there. When I think about it, I don't know who exactly would be willing to trade for AJ Brown during this offseason, but that'll be something to monitor. And then if he stays on the Eagles are an interesting situation because their offenses have been up and down. After the Super Bowl with the Chiefs, their offense was great. They were downhill. They didn't do great. And then they came back with Kellen Moore. The offense was amazing. Saquon was firing on all cylinders. A.J. Brown was playing well. They were looking good. And then last season, they didn't look so good again. So it's a lot of things that are in flux here. They also hired a new OC that I saw, I believe it was Saquon or Jalen Hurts talking about how their new offensive scheme was great. So maybe that's something that will help AJ. Maybe he'll get more targets because that was one of the things he was complaining about. But it's a very tricky situation with him and his diva nature. And then we'll go to one player whose future is not uncertain, and that is CJ Stroud. Texans general manager Nick Caserio said that the trade speculations around CJ Stroud are moronic and that the team is not trading CJ. So this is interesting. If I'm correct, CJ Stroud has not signed an extension. He hasn't exactly been playing well. He had a great rookie season. It was chef's kiss. I loved his rookie season. I thought he was going to be amazing. I'm an Ohio State fan. I loved it. But after that, he has been on the struggle bus. His playoff performances have been rough, to say the least. So when you look at the numbers, rookie season, 4,100 yards with 23 touchdowns, only 5 interceptions. For a rookie, chef's kiss. You can ask for anything better. Then he hit a sophomore slump. He only had 3,700 yards and 20 touchdowns, but he had 12 interceptions to go along with that. That's not great. And then he was also sacked 52 times that season. And then last year he missed 3 games. There were calls to bring in Davis Mills as the full-time starter. He only threw for 3,100 yards, only 19 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. It wasn't great. So the regular season has seen a bit of a decline. But then you get into the playoff numbers. Rookie season, again, was great. 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, threw for 449 yards. They beat the Browns, and then they lost to the Chiefs, but that defense was amazing, and no one really expected CJ Stroud to be playing that well at that time. But then in the 2024 playoffs, he didn't exactly play well. He had one touchdown, one interception. Did not exactly play well. He was sacked 11 times too. It wasn't great. And then when you look at this year's playoff run, it was ugly. It was really, really ugly. He threw only 2 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. He got sacked 6 times. Like it, it wasn't fun. I, I didn't enjoy it at all. So, C.J. Stroud he's been on a downward trend. That's to say. It's clear, however, that rookie season, he is talent. He is talented. There is also the caveat that Texans offense hasn't been operating at 100%. Nico Collins missed a lot of time this season. They don't really have a real running back. They don't really have an amazing offensive line either. So there are a lot of questions there. But I think this is just a vote of confidence from the GM to try and boost CJ Stroud. I saw the thing that he shaved his head, got rid of the dreads, supposedly to lock in. He will need to lock in this season. This season, if he doesn't play well again this season, things are going to start to get dicey. The rumors and the legends about Ohio State quarterbacks not being able to play in the NFL will continue. So that is something that he will have to overcome, something that he'll have to play through next season. And then after that, we have some news about the franchise tag. Even though George Pickens has not been franchise tagged as of yet, Cowboys COO Stephen Jones said that, of course, we're leaning towards the franchise tag. We want Pickens here. We think the world of him. We want him here. Love him, and I think he wants to be here. So that's all a plus. So the franchise tag George Pickens would be the smart thing. You saw what he was able to do when he got the targets. He was a monster. He put up 1,400 receiving yards this season. A lot of people were saying, oh, he's better than CeeDee Lamb. And honestly, low-key, yeah, he looked like a top 5 receiver this year. It's top 5 is obviously 2 LSU boys, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, and then you have JSN and you have Puka Nacua. But after that, George Pickens. He was a top 5 receiver. And if he continues to produce, he will be a top 5 receiver. So franchise tagging him this season and then working on a long-term contract would be the smart thing to do for the Cowboys. But you have that caveat right there. It's the Cowboys. It's Jerry Jones, who isn't exactly the brightest bulb in the box anymore. Let's put it that way. He has a tendency to wait way too long to sign all of his players to contract extensions. He traded Micah Parsons for some reason that is beyond me. I can't comprehend. He signed Dak Prescott the day before the season started to an extension. So I think a franchise tag right now would be smart. But it's not smart if you drag this out like miles and miles and miles. Franchise tag him now and then work with him to get a contract extension. Because like I said, he is a top 5 receiver in the league right now. If you don't give him that extension, you are going to be on the losing end of this transaction. And that's not exactly what you want at this point. You want to try and compete because defense isn't great. You need the offense to be good, and George Pickens being on the offense is how you are going to be good. And then George Pickens has not been franchise tagged, but one player that has is Kyle Pitts. The Falcons have officially franchise tagged Kyle Pitts. They're keeping him for another year, fully guaranteed deal worth more than $15 million. They have a lot of time to work out a long-term deal. Kyle Pitts was an All-Pro selection, even though he has been a bit disappointing for a top 5 pick outside of last season. I will say that. I thought he was going to be amazing, but he is not. But this is good for the Falcons. They need to keep the offensive talent, Drake London, Bijan, and Kyle Pitts. They need to keep them there. Give their quarterback weapons, whoever that may be, whether it's Kirk Cousins, which isn't phenomenal, or if it's Michael Penix coming back from that knee injury. They need to have the offensive talent there, and keeping Kyle Pitts in the building is the first step of that. Now, him, like George Pickens, they have to work out a deal, work out a long-term deal. The hope was that they would work out a long-term deal, and they should still hope to do that. Work to keep him with the team, because that is going to help you in the long run. And when you look at the impact this has had on other teams, I talked about the franchise tag on the last show. If he wasn't franchise tagged, I thought that potentially he could have gone to the Chiefs. That would have been nice. Bring in the heir apparent to George Kittle in that offense. He'd be able to stretch the field once Mahomes come back. He's a big vertical threat. That would have been nice. So this is the major tight end in the free agent class. Other than that, it's nothing else truly impressive. So this is a major move for the Falcons that honestly needed to be done. That was all the major news in the NFL, but now we get to some sad news here. Rondale Moore has died. It was reported by one of his former coaches, and you just hate to see this in the NFL. He was a young player. It just, I don't know all the details, and I don't want to go into all of the details. It just sucks when you have young players, like you see it, born in 2000, died this year. Like that's just sad. That just breaks my heart when you see young players like this, young people in general, dying without the opportunity to fulfill what was honestly a dream. He was playing in the NFL. I remember when he was drafted out of Purdue, I believe it was. He was squatting these crazy numbers with the Cardinals. He was looking good. That was back when they had D-Hop too. I thought they were going to be, it was going to be amazing. That was going to be the 1-2 punch. But he's been dealing with injuries. He tore his ACL, I think, 2 seasons ago, and then he re-tore it during the first preseason game with the Vikings. So we don't know what he's dealing with, and I speak for a lot of athletes when I say that athletes are dealing with a lot. There's a lot of mental stuff that goes on within an athlete's mind. For context, I played football here at the University of Massachusetts for a year, and things didn't exactly go too well, so I stopped playing. But this is not about me. I'm just trying to put context to what I'm saying. There's a lot of stuff going on in an athlete's mind that we don't know about. Yeah, it's great to talk to people, express how we're feeling, what we're going through, but there's also just the internal battle that only the athlete can fight. It's the athlete against themselves. That's something that they have to deal with constantly. So to see Rondale Moore pass away at this young age, it's truly unfortunate. It's just sad news for the entire NFL and the entire sporting world. Rest in peace, Ronald Moore. You will not be forgotten. So that also it brings to mind something else. I wrote about this earlier in the season. Marshawn Nealon also died earlier in the season, and this is not great for football, having young players dying like this. I think this call, for me at least, this calls into, or this brings to attention the issue of mental health. I know the NFL has been proactive with trying to tackle this. A lot of athletes have been vocal about this. There's been a lot of stuff coming out about mental health. So I think that these young athletes and these athletes dealing with mental health, I think that there's still a lot of room for improvement. So that also has to be improved, but it's just something that's very, very unfortunate. But we're gonna leave that behind. We're gonna leave behind the world of football. We'll go over to the world of basketball. There isn't anything too major right now, but I thought I'd just touch on the fact that Dylan Brooks suffered a broken left hand, and he will be sidelined for 4 to 6 weeks. He's had a good season, honestly, averaging 21 points, three plus rebounds. A lot of people did not think he would be playing this well, but he was one of the driving factors of the Phoenix Sun team that is a playoff contender. So this is a major, major blow for them. And if you look at the NBA standings right now, the Phoenix Suns are at the 7 seed. They are 2.5 games ahead of the Warriors, and only 2 games behind the Timberwolves for the 6th seed. So if Dylan Brooks had stayed healthy, they probably could have stayed on the tail of the Timberwolves, but now it'll be interesting to see what happens with them and if they're able to maintain their spot at the top of the play-in race and possibly chase after the Minnesota Timberwolves for that last guaranteed playoff spot. But that was all for the NBA. The Winter Olympics have come to an end as the countries stand. Norway topped it off with 41 total medals, 18 gold medals, 12 silvers, 11 bronze medals. They led all the countries. The U.S. came in second with 33 total medals and 12 golds, 12 silvers, 9 bronzes. And then if you are going off of total medals, Italy came in third with 30. If you're going off gold medals, it was a tie between the Netherlands and Italy. However, the Netherlands did have more silver medals. But Netherlands, I'll read it out for you. Netherlands finished with 10 golds, 7 silvers, 3 bronzes. Italy finished out with 10 golds, 6 silvers, 14 bronzes. So that was how everything panned out there. But I live and go to school in Massachusetts. And there is one thing that every person was tuned into Sunday morning, and that was the hockey game between the U.S. and Canada. So it was a tight game. U.S. opened up the scoring, and then Cale Makar, who went to UMass, my school right now, plays for the Colorado Avalanche, even the score. And honestly, it was a tight game. Canada dominated. They have an incredible roster, honestly, way better than the U.S. if you look at the talent there. But the U.S. were able to do something that had not been done in 46 years since the Miracle on Ice. Let's take a look.
The net. And it's Werenski. Now Jack Hughes pokes it around McCarr. United States with numbers. Back across it comes. Jack Hughes wins it. The golden goal for the United States. For the first time since the 1980 Miracle, the United States takes the gold. Jack Hughes beating Jordan Bennington.
Yeah, the U.S. scored in overtime sudden death to beat Canada. Jack Hughes and both him and his brother, heroes of U.S. hockey at the moment. And I cannot tell you the amount of stuff that has been showing up on my pages, whether it's on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, Twitter, everything you can think of that is just making fun of Canada and how the U.S. beat them at their national sport. So, yeah, the U.S. was able to win gold in hockey for the first time, as you heard it in the commentary, since the 1980 Miracle on Ice against the Soviet Union. Okay, so that was all the major news. Now it is time to look at some of the games that I previewed on the last show. First game that I previewed was Rockets and the Knicks. Knicks ended up winning that 108-106. Kevin Durant dropped 30 points despite his Twitter fingers and everything that happened there. Sengun had a decent game on top of that, but he only dropped 11 points, 12 rebounds, not phenomenal. And then for the Knicks, you had OG with 20, Cat with 25, Jalen Brunson with 20. Nothing out of this world, but the Knicks get a solid win at home. They erased a 18-point deficit in the fourth quarter, so solid win for them. After that, we had the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Thunder, despite being down J-Dub and Shea, they managed to come away with a 121-113 win. For the Cavaliers, you had James Harden with 20, D. Mitch with 20, and Sam Merrill with 20 off the bench. But you did have a couple goose eggs. You had a goose egg from Dean Wade, a goose egg from Naquan Tomlin. So not exactly great bench production too. And then Mr. 18-8, he had 15 points and only 2 rebounds, which isn't exactly great. And then for the Thunder, they had decent scoring across the board. They had 7 players with double digits, including iHeart, Chet, Isaiah Joe, Lou Dort, Cason Wallace, Jalen Williams, and Jared McCain. So their depth continues to shine. And Thunder, they snapped the Cavs 7-game win streak, which they've been looking good before and after they got Harden. So there was that. And then Nikola Topic making his comeback after recovering from chemo. So some positive news to come out of this game. And it was a good game. I enjoyed watching this, even though the Thunder led the entire or most of the way. And then for third game, classic game, Celtics-Lakers. Celtics came away with a dominant 111-89 victory. Even though they were tied at the end of the first quarter, the Celtics just pulled away from there, opened up a 10-point lead at the half, and it just kept growing. So, Celtics. Jaylen Brown, continuing to play well, dropped 32 points. And then you had Peyton Pritchard drop 30 points off the bench. He continues to be one of the best bench players in the league. Sixth man of the year last year. Incredible player for them. And then when you look at the Lakers, not exactly a great performance. LeBron James with 20. You had DeAndre Ayton with 4 points, 7 rebounds. Not great. Marcus Smart dropped a goose egg. 0 for 7 from the field, 0 for 5 from the free throw line, or from 3. He only had 1 rebound, 4 assists. So not exactly top of the line play. Luka had an inefficient 25 points. He was 9 of 22, which isn't phenomenal. And Austin Reeves had an inefficient 40% from the field, only 15 points. And then the bench, non-existent. Like, I'm just listing off these numbers: 0 points, 5, 3, 4, 0, 2, 9, 2. Like that's not gonna help you in the long run. And then when you look at their shooting splits, it's 39% from the field, 30% from 3. That's not gonna win you games right now. And the final NBA game that I previewed in the last show was the Spurs and the Detroit Pistons. Man, these are two really, really good teams right now. You look at it, the Spurs, Wemby only dropped 21 points, but he had 17 rebounds and 6 blocks, which is insane. You had Devin Vassell drop 20. Like, the Spurs are a great team. Absolutely great team. They shot a better percentage from 3 than they did from the field. They shot 45% from 3 and only 42% from the field. It's insane what they're doing right now. And then when you look at the Pistons, Cade didn't play in this game, but he is playing amazingly. Jalen Duren did decently, filled in, scored 25 points, 14 rebounds. That's a good scoreline right there for Jalen Duren. Then you had 2 other starters with 4 and 8 points respectively, Tobias Harris and Asar Thompson. So I said Cade didn't play. Pardon me. Cade had 16 points. Not exactly an efficient performance. 25% roughly, or 20% roughly, 5 of 26 from the field. Not a great shooting performance right there. So it was a rough night for Cade, but Jalen Duren did play well. And then that's all of the NBA games. Now we'll go over to college hoops. There were a bunch of ranked games. We had the top 4 playing against each other. First game was number 1, Michigan against number 3, Duke. And Duke ended up coming away with the 68-63 victory. It was a good game. They played it tight the entire way through. Duke was only up by 2 at the half, but they continued to grow that lead, and they won in the end by 5. Cam Boozer played well, 18 points, 7 assists, 10 rebounds. Good stat line, including 2 blocks as well. So it was a good win for the Blue Devils, as they are one of the number 1 seeds right now. After that, you had Arizona and Houston. Arizona came in as a 4 seed. Houston was a 2. And Arizona came away with the 7-point win, 73-66. The big name for Arizona was Anthony Delorso, coming off the bench with 22 points. Had a good outing, 8 of 14 from the field. And for Houston, they didn't really have a major punch. Kingston Fleming, 17 points, but only 6 of 17 from the field, like 33%-ish from the field, which isn't exactly great shooting. And the Wildcats get back in the win category after a rough stretch where they hadn't exactly been performing too well. And then BYU took down number 6 Iowa State, 10 points, 79-69. And it was the AJ DeMonsa show, as it's been the whole season. Dropped 29 points, 10 rebounds, 9 assists, near triple double. He's playing 40 minutes a game. He was 10 of 17 from the field. He's a monster. I've seen the number one pick odds, and his odds just keep growing. As of right now, he's surpassed Cam Boozer, and it's insane to see what he's doing right now. And then the final college hoops game that I previewed, Houston faced off against Kansas, and they got upset. Kansas with the 10-point victory, 69 or 13-point victory, 69-56. Houston only had one player in double digits with Kingston Flemings had 16 points. He only shot 33% from the field, though, 6 of 18, which isn't great. And then when you turn your attention to Kansas, Darren Peterson, only 14 points. He's been dealing with some stuff, but you made it up with double-digit scoring from Bryson Tiller, Melvin Council Jr., and Trey White. So they made it up, and they came away with a good victory over a tough Houston team. And then the last games that I previewed go to the world of soccer across the pond. Arsenal took down Tottenham 4-1 with 2 goals from Eze and 2 goals from Gyökeres. So they dominated the game. They had 60% of possession, shots on goal, shot attempts. It was complete domination on all fronts. And Arsenal continue to do well. They have 61 points on the table now, but I will talk about that when I go a bit over the tables. And then the other game that I previewed, you had Manchester City up against Newcastle. Manchester came away with a 2-1 victory with both goals from Nico O'Reilly. And Manchester City didn't completely dominate possession, only 54.8 to Newcastle's 45.2, so not completely dominated. Shots on target relatively even completely even with 7 shots on goal for both teams. Shot attempts 15-13 in favor of Manchester City. So it was a very, very even game overall. So those were all the games that I previewed last show. Some interesting results, some upsets too along the way. But now it's time to check in to see where all of these teams stand at this point in the season. We'll start off with the NBA. Talked about the Pistons, still the 1 seed, 42-14 right now. 8-2 in the last 10. They did just lose the last game against the Spurs. Tough outing. And then they are followed up by the Celtics and the Knicks. Celtics are a game ahead of the Knicks right now, but it could be a bigger gap as the Celtics still have not played 2 games. They're 37-19. The Knicks are 37-21. So they could be a full 2 games ahead of the Knicks when things are all said and done. Then you look at the bottom, and you have the Pacers down there still. They will most likely continue to stay down there as they look to land, as I mentioned, AJ DeMonsa, whose odds have been continuing to rise. And then we look over at the Western Conference. Oklahoma City are still the one seed, 44-14. But the Spurs are hot on their tails right now. Only 2.5 games back. They're 41-16. They're in a 9-game winning streak. They're 9-1 in their last 10. They've just been playing blistering basketball right now. They're playing very, very well. And you look back down at the bottom, you still got the Kings down there, and they're going to stay down there. As I mentioned during the last show, Sabonis and Levine out for the season-ending surgery. So expect the Kings to be a top 5 pick this year. And I honestly hope that none of those good players go there because they will be ruined eternally, sadly. And then we'll go over to college hoops as everything stands right now. we have Duke as the 1 seed, Arizona ranked number 2, followed by Michigan, Iowa State, and Houston. Those are top 5 unanimous across the AP and the coaches poll. And then they're followed up by UConn, Florida, Purdue, and Gonzaga. And then you still have Miami, Ohio, undefeated, 27-0. Only undefeated team in the top 25 as it stands right now. And they're in the top 25 for both the AP and the coaches poll. So there is that. And then you have St. Louis as well, 25-2, both in the AP and the coaches poll. So we are closing in fast on March Madness, and these rankings will be very, very important as things continue to play out. And then finally, we'll get to the world of soccer. We'll go over to Serie A, where Inter is still sitting atop the Serie A table, 10 points ahead of Milan with 6. Inter is at 64. Milan has 54, and they're followed by Napoli and Roma, both with 50 respectively. And then Juventus is at 5th, followed by Como and Atalanta, who are only 1 point behind with 45. So as it stands right now, that gap between the top 4 in Juventus, Como, and Atalanta is slowly starting to open up. But there are still 12 games in the season. That is 36 points, so a lot of stuff can happen between now and the end of the season. And then we go over to La Liga, where, as it's been this entire show, Barcelona, Real Madrid. Barcelona is at 61, Real Madrid is at 60. They're followed up by Villarreal and Atletico with 48, Villarreal with 51. So it'll either be Barcelona or Real Madrid winning the La Liga, as it's been for a very, very long time. And then finally, we'll wrap it up with the Premier League. We have Arsenal still sitting atop the table with 61 points. But only 5 points behind them is Manchester City. So things could get interesting. Aston Villa is 10 points behind with 51 points, followed by Manchester United at 48. And then you have Chelsea and Liverpool both at 45. So those, I say top 6, really the ones that are going to be competing for that Champions League spot. And it should be interesting to see how everything plays out for them and the rest of the season. But that is all the major news that has happened within the world of sports. Those are the updates on the games that are previewed. Those are where all the teams stand at this point before next episode. So I hope you enjoyed, and stay tuned for Friday episode. Follow on the socials, Spotify, YouTube, everything like that. Thank you for listening.